thus irradiating your bones. So that I would avoid milk products and perhaps even take some strontium supplements that are the non-radioactive strontium to prevent the radioactive strontium from getting in your bones.
How interesting. So milk, cream, butter, anything, cheese, all that needs to go anyway.
Yeah, that a lot of Americans don't realize it, but one of the reasons why Americans are a lot fatter than people in other countries and people in Europe or Japan is this heavy diet of milk products and meat products. And I remember Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, God bless his soul, he, in 1978, he ordered his attorney, his Surgeon General, to come out with a better eating plan for Americans that lowered their intake of milk products, of cheese and dairy and meat. And there was such an incredible opposition from the meat and dairy industry that he had to back off on that. And so we have today people that are over consuming meat and dairy products. And Europeans don't do that. Japanese don't do that, and they're healthier for it. And that's a big problem. And you get all these cardiovascular problems as soon as you eat a high meat diet, a high dairy product. You get cardiovascular problems. You mentioned thyroid to me, hypothyroidism. You can't correct hypothyroidism if you don't give up dairy. I mean, dairy is intimately connected with hypothyroidism. As soon as you give up dairy, then all of a sudden the puffiness in your arms goes away if you're taking thyroid medication.
Let's talk about the thyroid for a little bit, because there's another doctor, not an MD, but very well-known researcher who's recently published about Hashimoto's and how if you have Hashimoto's and you're hypothyroid, the answer is not to just take a bunch more thyroid, even if it's Armour thyroid or Iodoral or iodine, but to do something totally different. Talk about that, because you seem to know who he is and understand what he said.
Yeah, this is Dr. Karazian, and Dr. Karazian has come to the conclusion, which I agree with, and other MDs I know agree with this also, that in the case of Hashimoto's disease, 80 to 90% of those patients have immunological problems. And Dr. Karazian has pointed out this is an immunological problem. It isn't a lack of hormones. It's not an endocrinology problem. It's an immunological problem. And so that, eating more and more, consuming more and more of iodine or of thyroid supplements is not going to help you if it's an immune problem. And so he suggests a special diet that he has and special supplements that he has, and he trains chiropractors to do this. And I advise everybody that be diagnosed by an MD, and if you get a diagnosis of Hashimoto's, then you go to a knowledgeable chiropractor who's been trained under Dr. Karazian to correct Hashimoto's, and they have special supplements, natural supplements to correct the immunological problems involved here.
I think that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, because on an endocrine level, most doctors would just give more thyroid.
The subject of endocrinology, it's so complex. I mean, it took me many, many years to learn this. It's as complex as nuclear physics. It's complex as being a rocket science to understand endocrinology. And there's still things I don't know, but I know enough that to send the Hashimoto's patients to chiropractors trained by Dr. Karazian.
I want to talk a little bit about L-glutathione, because it's become very popularized in the anti-aging communities with anti-aging doctors and in anti-aging in general. Talk about why L-glutathione is of interest to you and to others.
That's your primary natural antioxidant in your body is L-glutathione, and why do I say that? For example, anybody with asthma, they're probably lacking some L-glutathione in their lung cells and the epithelial cells of their lungs, and if they were to inhale L-glutathione powder into their lungs, their symptoms of asthma disappear within minutes. I mean, that's how important it is to the lung cells, but it's also important to every cell in the body, your L-glutathione. And why the lungs? Well, the lungs, you're breathing, again, pounds of oxygen every day, and you're creating less than an ounce a day of free radicals, of oxidants in those lung cells. That's the first cells that encounter the oxygen in the air and convert that and transport that in the bloodstream. And your lung cells, your epithelial cells, they have, typically the lung cells have 140 times the amount of glutathione that the blood has. So the serum blood has is 140 times the concentration amount. It's called the gradient. The gradient is 140 times in the lung cells versus the blood cells. And this is the way to solve that. Now, you can inhale the powder, which most people don't like because it irritates you and makes you cough. So most people these days, they're advising every day to take what's called liposomal glutathione. And liposomal glutathione is available at vitaminresearchproducts.com, vrp.com. And you take maybe a tablespoon of that a day, and it helps in resolving some of the problems with asthma and with free radicals in general.
Is that the best way to take L-glutathione?
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, some people are using it on the skin, transdermally on the skin, and some people are having really good effects with liposomal glutathione under the tongue. You know that works also. And some people, that don't have the money, if you only could spend pennies a day on this, you can inhale the glutathione powder directly into the lungs, and then immediately, because what the lungs are doing when they don't have enough glutathione, they start forming mucus to protect themselves, the epithelial cells, from the free radicals. They form mucus, and then you start coughing, and then you get congestion in your lungs. Where if you have sufficient L-glutathione, then the mucus production stops. Then your body knows that you've filled that need.
There are even some patches I hear. I don't know if they work or not.
That's the same as transdermal, as patches, and that'll work too. So there's a number of ways you can do this. My own preference is a liposomal glutathione, but then that'll cost you $60 a month.
Got it.
But actually, I mean, that's cheaper when you think about it. The typical treatment for asthma is the corticosteroid inhalers. The corticosteroid inhalers, they're typically the better ones. The powdered inhalers are $140, $150 a month. If you don't have insurance and you have to pay $140 or $50 a month, the $60 a month liposomal glutathione is more economic and better sense too. It actually attacks the problem rather than just treats the symptoms.
You had also talked about how we can get our animals, our beloved animals, to live 50% longer when given strong free radical scavengers. Do you have some ideas about that you'd like to share?
Professor Denham Harmon discovered in 1956 that he was giving his mice colonies a very strong antioxidant called BHT. BHT is short for butylated hydroxytoluene. He would give those to his mice, only 3% of their food. He would give that to them, and then they would live 50% longer. So this is new. This is no new news. This is 1956 knowledge. And then, of course, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw was advocating taking this and other strong antioxidants during the early 80s, and Dirk Pearson probably went overboard. He advocated taking mega doses of radical scavengers, and that didn't work. Again, you need a balanced approach, like we've been discussing with hormones. You need a balanced approach of a lower dosage, but steady state throughout the day. You need a lower dosage throughout the day, and for your pets, I mean, none of these pet manufacturers have discovered this, even though the research is from 1956 on. And then I did research in this with animals also in the 70s and 80s. And you really can extend the lifespan of animals. You can extend dogs can live to over 20 years of age if they're eating the right radical scavengers. And we're not so certain about how much this will help human aging, but we know with animals, we know with dogs, cats, mice, rats, you can get a 50% extension of their lifespan if you give them the right radical scavengers.
I think a lot of animal lovers will be happy to hear that.
Yeah.
What is the big arginine craze with losing weight? You didn't talk about it in your book, but I wanted to ask you what your take on this is.
You do lose weight with arginine, and it actually was best known back in the early 80s two nice Jewish boys from Scottsdale, Arizona. They were nationally promoting a product called Dream Away. And Dream Away had arginine and ornithine in it, and you take one at night, and during the night you would burn